It was the splash that caught my attention first. A heavy thud, like something big had hit the water. I was on my dock, fishing pole in hand, ready for a peaceful morning on Hemlock Lake. But instead of casting my line, I found myself staring at something I never expected. A brand new, solid iron gate, gleaming under the sun. It looked like something out of a bad sci-fi movie, like a gate designed to keep me out of my own home. And there, right next to it, was a shiny silver plaque that read, "Saw private HOA access, only violators will be prosecuted." Saw. My dock. My lake. My property. And now, blocked off like I was some trespasser in my own backyard. Oh, and to top it off, a security camera was pointed straight at me, blinking red like it was flipping me off. That was when I knew something dumb and sinister was going on. And the woman behind it? Well, her name was Karen Rausch. Now, I'd always dreamed of levying by the lake. After 27 years of designing highways, bridges, and drainage systems, I'd cashed out and moved into this small A-frame cabin tucked at the edge of Hemlock Lake, a quiet, blue haven nestled between pine trees. My backyard sloped gently into a patch of reeds, and it opened up to the water. Every morning, I'd walk barefoot out to my old wooden dock, thermos in hand, to fish in the mist. It was the kind of life I'd worked my whole career for. No mortgage, no liens, peace and quiet. At least, that was the plan. But instead of casting my line that morning, I stood there slack-jawed, staring at the unauthorized gate that now cut me off from my lake access. I followed the fence with my eyes black steel bars stretching in both directions like some dystopian train track. It ran all the way up to my neighbor's property line, then curved back toward the private road leading to the rest of the subdivision. Who in their right mind installs a fence around someone else's lake access without so much as a knock on the door? Later that afternoon, the answer showed up, striding up the gravel path in the form of Karen Rausch, HOA president. Clipboard in hand, like she was about to announce the winner of a game show. She wore this stiff lavender blouse and sandals that were way too ambitious for gravel paths, and the expression on her face? Well, it could curdle milk. Before I could say anything, she smiled one of those tight-lipped smiles and gestured toward the gate like she was presenting a grand prize. "We've installed a protective barrier around the lake access," she said, like she was announcing a town-wide bake sale. "Strictly for residents within the association. You understand, of course, liability concerns." I blinked. "I live right here. This is my lake access." She cocked her head and laughed like I'd said something cute, but wildly incorrect. "Well, technically, the access strip is now part of a parcel maintained by the Hemlock Shores Homeowners Association. You must have missed the notices. We sent several," she said, tapping her clipboard like it was a shield. My blood pressure spiked. "Karen, I didn't get a single notice. And how did you even get permission to build this? That land isn't part of your HOA." "Oh, but it is now," she replied sweetly. "The HOA acquired the lease last fall. It was previously managed by the old bait shop owner, bless his soul. Since he passed, the land reverted to open bid. We secured it and redesignated it as common HOA property." I just stood there, trying to process what she was saying. The bait show pit was this old shack that had sat on a narrow strip of land between my property line and the lake. I always assumed it was part of my deed or a county easement. Turns out, I was wrong. And Karen? She'd swooped in like a hawk and leased the land, all without informing me. "Let me guess," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't tell anyone who lived nearby?" "It was discussed in our October meeting, fully above board," she chirped. "You're welcome to submit a formal appeal, though as a non-member, I'm afraid you won't have voting rights." I was stunned. I wasn't even part of the HOA, but somehow this woman had managed to rope off my lake access and declare it private HOA territory without even knocking on my door. The next day, I tried to take action. I grabbed my bolt cutters, ready to cut through that gate like some renegade freedom fighter. But I barely got through one link before Karen showed up with the security guard, no less, and called the sheriff. The deputy, to his credit, looked just as confused as I was. After checking property maps, he confirmed that while I owned the cabin and the surrounding land, the parcel with the dock and gate was technically under HOA lease. I couldn't believe it. Karen watched it all unfold like she was at the opera, sipping a martini. By the end of the week, a warning sign went up: "Do not trespass, due law 1,000 fine." That ridiculous camera? still blinking, watching my every move. I went to the HOA board, attended one of their meetings, and it felt like walking into a soap opera run by suburban VY lanes. Every single person there was either terrified of Karen or completely hypnotized by her delusions of control. One guy said, "You're not on the lake list anymore." The lake list? What the hell was that? Then came the kicker. Karen had the only key to the lock. I sulked for a while. What was I going to do? Hire a lawyer and spend thousands of dollars trying to reclaim a tiny sliver of land with a gate on it? I even considered digging a tunnel under the fence like some cartoon prisoner or building a floating dock off my shoreline just to make a point. And then I saw it. A for sale sign posted discreetly on the parcel next to the gated strip, the same land Karen had leased. I pulled out my phone, called the real estate agent, and talked to her. The seller? An elderly woman, Lee Vy-ing in Alaska, who inherited the land from her late husband and forgot it even existed. 2 weeks later, I owned it. The deed was in my name, and I was now the proud owner of the narrow, overlooked strip of land. The kicker? The parcel with the gate wasn't leased, it was for sale. Karen had assumed the other half of the property was part of the same plot. I bought it for less than the cost of a new fishing boat. Poetic, isn't it? She locked me out, but now I own the very lock. I waited a week before making my move. Let Karen get comfortable with her little symbol of power. The lake's annual HOA summer brunch was coming up, and sure enough, they were setting it up right on the other side of my former dock, now her exclusive community retreat. The morning of the event, I made my move. Lockpick kit in hand, not to break in, but to change the lock entirely. I brought a heavy-duty padlock, the kind you see on military ammo crates. The lock clicked shut like a gavel, and I affixed a fresh sign. Saw private property access by owner permission only. Saw. That afternoon, Karen marched to the gate, clipboard in hand, wearing that smug grin that could blind small animals. She tried her key. It didn't fit. She tried again. No luck. She twisted and jiggled, even banged it against the gate, growing redder by the second. And then, finally, she turned to the crowd and said with the tightest smile imaginable, "There's been a small technical issue with the lock. It'll be resolved momentarily." I took a sip of my lemonade. When she looked up, I waved, and then I tossed her a copy of the deed. She stared at it, jaw moving, but no sound coming out. Finally, she stammered, This must be a mistake. You can't just buy community property." I leaned casually against the gate. "You're right. That's why I didn't buy the gate. I bought the land. The land your gate is standing on. All the way to that big rock over there." Her face twisted. She scanned the deed again, looked at the plot map highlighted in neon yellow until the realization hit her. Slow, painful, delicious. She was standing on land that no longer belonged to the HOA. "But we installed this gate," she said, her voice shrill now. I looked at her calmly. "The HOA funded it, but I own the land underneath it, which means it's mine. In fact, I was thinking of replacing it with a hammock." Someone in the crowd laughed. Karen's face went white, and the tide was shifting. A few board members, who had been too afraid to speak up before, now looked uncomfortable. Some even looked entertained. Stephanie, the sharp-witted board secretary, raised an eyebrow, crossed her arms, and gave me a look of approval. Karen stormed off, cell phone glued to her ear, demanding an emergency board session. But there was no emergency session to save her. The HOA had leased half the property and built improvements on land they didn't own. I had purchased the other half, with full control over the gate and the legal right to decide who touched it. The next day, I filed an official notice with the county clerk. The fence was now partially installed on private property, and any unauthorized alterations would be considered trespassing. I sent copies to the HOA, the sheriff's office, and, for fun, Karen's lawyer. Karen's retaliation came swiftly, with letters accusing me of sabotaging community morale. The letters were laughable. My response was simple, a copy of my deed and a post-it note. Cooperate this. Over the next few weeks, the situation continued to escalate until I caught Karen red-handed. One day, I noticed her crouched by the gate, screwdriver in hand, trying to loosen the hinges. I didn't say a word, just stood there, letting my shadow fall across her back. She froze. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I was just inspecting the damage," she stammered. "Funny," I said. "The camera says no one's touched it. Except you." She blinked. You installed a camera? It's legal on my property, I said calmly. And it has a pretty decent microphone. She stood up, brushing the dirt off her knees, trying to recover. You're being extremely uncooperative. Lucky I don't charge admission, I said. You're welcome to leave before the county adds trespassing to your list. She left, cheeks flushed and steps clipped. That was the last I saw of her until the HOA called for a full audit of its spending. Turns out, Karen had allocated overdue Lot 88,000 to fencing and safety enhancements without proper documentation. She also used HOA funds for a weekend retreat at a local spa. She resigned 2 days later. Things slowly started to settle down after that. The HOA rewrote their policies, focusing on transparency and neighborhood inclusion. And I went back to what I loved most, fishing. But Karen? She made one final return, not physically, but digitally. She launched a campaign called SAW Save Our Shoreline SAW with VY Deos, a Facebook group, and even TikToks. At first, I was furious. I didn't ask for fame, but the internet did what it does best. It turned her into a meme. It all died down eventually. But Karen's consequences didn't stop there. The county hit her with a due Lot 10,000 fine for zoning violations. Her online presence went quiet, and I never heard from her again. Things were peaceful again. But, of course, peace never lasts forever. I stood by the gate one evening, feeling the breeze off the lake, when Mason came up to me. He smiled. You coming to the late-night fish-off tomorrow? I grinned. Wouldn't miss it. And as for Karen, she was long gone. Her drama, her fence, her reign all reduced to stories people told over cookouts. Peace returned to Hemlock Lake. And the gate? It stood open. Not because I had to, but because I could.